Ava and Carol Detective Agency. The Mystery of the Pharaoh's Diamonds. Ava tilted her head. Could it be the museum?
Great job,
smiled Carol.
And what part of the museum just happens to be facing the bank?
The Egyptian exhibit. Ava turned and looked at Carol. Amazement filled her face. Do you think they deposited the diamonds into the bank? Seems so risky.
What?
Asked Carol incredulously. She smacked Ava on the back of the head.
What do ATMs have?
Money. And tiny little envelopes for making deposits.
A camera! You idiot, a camera! They all have cameras,
said Carol, jabbing at the camera. I know. I was just messing with you, geez. I make faces at them all the time, hoping that somewhere some bank manager will be watching the replay and submit my video to an agent in Hollywood.
At the museum, you were like a bright shooting star, sighed Carol. And now you implode like a black hole, sucking the very life from my veins.
Carol cocked an eyebrow and looked at Ava.
Too much?
Yeah, you lost me at the sucking the very life from my veins part. Ava turned and looked at the museum, then turned back to the ATM. All right, moving past this awkward moment, we need to see the bank's video from the night of the robbery.
Bingo,
nodded Carol.
You suspect they used the window. Now we just need to see how, and if we're lucky, who.
One small hiccup. From what I know about banks, and it's not much, but we can't just march into a bank and ask them to show us their security footage. Plus, Ava paused. I'm sure the police have already done that.
Lucky for us,
said Carol, grabbing the worn brass door handle.
My dad is a good friend of Mr. Talbot, the bank manager.
A small bell jingled as the girls entered the bank. To their right, a row of tellers were busy helping customers. 2 small sofas and a couple chairs rested against the opposite wall, and at the far end of the bank were a series of offices. However, the most alluring piece of furniture was a small pedestal that stood like a gallant knight wedged between the 2 sofas. Atop the pedestal rested a small ceramic bowl filled with miniature candy bars and suckers. Unfortunately, the candy would have to wait. Mr. Talbot was just finishing up with a customer. He made eye contact with Carol and gave her a wink as he said his goodbyes to his customer. Ava cast one quick, mournful look toward the colorful candy treasure that lay just out of reach. Mr. Talbot was the epitome of dapper. He looked like an older Clark Kent. He wore his hair in a hard part just above his temple. Eloquent wisps of silver hair, strokes from a master's paintbrush, lay just under the arms of dark-framed 1960s-style glasses. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit with a red tie that acted like a punctuation mark to an exquisite outfit. Wow, said Ava, looking at Mr. Talbot. Retro meets modern. I approve. Thank you, young lady. And good morning, Carol. To what do I owe this pleasure? Mr. Talbot asked, smiling down at them.
Hi, Mr. Talbot. This is my friend, Ava Clark,
she said, gesturing toward Ava. Nice to meet you, Ava, he said as he shook her hand. It felt like how a banker's hand should feel, warm and reassuring. Nice to meet you. Ava smiled. How are your parents? He asked, beaming down at Carol. I haven't seen your dad since we lost the bowling tournament. He paused, balled up his fist, and bit into his knuckles, his manicured nails glistening in the fluorescent lighting. The Concord cruisers were exceptional athletes. They tormented us. I was hoping your dad had recovered from the loss."
Carol patted his arm and nodded her head appreciatively. "He took it rather hard, Mr. Talbot. He locked himself in his office and threatened to set fire to his favorite bowling shoes, the orange and white Dexters."
Carol bowed her head for dramatic effect. "Not his Dexters," whispered Mr. Talbot, barely audible. "That's horrible. I'll give him a call this evening. The best thing to do after falling off a horse is to get right back on."
"Unless you have a concussion," said Carol. "Then it's actually best to wait a while and perhaps seek medical attention."
"Yes," he nodded, "unless you have a concussion." His eyebrows knotted together as if they were about to duel. "I apologize, girls. What was it you said you needed?" he asked, looking slightly confused.
"Yes, sorry about that. I'll get right to the point. You, of course, know about the museum robbery."
"Oh, yes, indeed. Nasty business. I'm just glad no one was hurt."
"Well, Ava and I are conducting a little investigation of our own, and I'm writing an article for the school paper, the Cherrywood Chatter, about the robbery."
"Oh," said Mr. Talbot, sucking in sharply, his excitement palpable. He leaned in and rested a hand on each girl's shoulder, creating a small huddle of exclusivity. "I used to write for the Cherrywood Chatter when I was in school. I was their financial advisor, in charge of bake sales, car washes, basically all aspects of fundraising. My articles were as sharp as a tack. My information, though verbose, was filled with financial wisdom. I truly think I made an impact on quite a few of my classmates' lives."
"Or helped cure insomnia," thought Ava.
Yet, due to her exceptional upbringing, she found herself saying,
"Sounds absolutely fascinating."
"Oh, indeed it was. Those were the days when writers wrote real stories, girls," explained Mr. Talbot, reflecting on the past. "If I hadn't become a banker, I'm sure I would have been a financial reporter, instead of that Elvin Morris on the local news." He gave an exasperated sigh, then looked back at the girls. "I'm sorry, girls. I went off on a tangent. You were asking about the robbery?"
"Don't apologize. I dig your passion, Mr. Talbot," smiled Ava. "It's inspiring."
Ava had the rare ability to make just about everyone feel good about themselves.
"We were just wondering if the bank's ATM camera records 24/7.
"Oh, yes, it certainly does. It's constantly recording, and then that video data is saved to the cloud. I'm not really sure what the cloud is. I always imagine a bunch of computers in a big cloud." He paused for a second. Ava could tell he was envisioning computers floating on a big, fluffy cumulus cloud. "The video is archived in weekly records," he continued. "I can retrieve the videos from any computer, anywhere in the world, as long as I have an internet connection." He smiled proudly.
"Oh, cool,"
said Carol.
"So it basically works like my iPhone. When I save my pics and videos to the cloud, then I can access them later."
"Exactly," smiled Mr. Talbot. "It's not like the old days where everything was stored on tape."
"Do you ever submit any of the ATM videos to the news or Hollywood agents?" asked Ava. "For example," she explained, "if you were to see, raw talent." Ava brushed her purple bangs from her forehead and gave him a quick profile.
If you're enjoying Thomas Lockhaven's audiobook content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way to help out the channel.